The closer we get to the season, the more and more we have to be concerned about pests. And I kind of want to give like a simple overview of multiple ways to reduce the pests in your garden. We're going to start in the beginning and just kind of work our way up. It's not overly complicated, but there's a couple things that we need to know just to keep these out of your garden and keep you moving in the right direction. If you're growing right now, you know it can be a nightmare with brassicas and all this, and how much pest pressure are you really going to get? So that's what we need to be concerned about. And we don't have a lot of pest pressure right now. There's certain crops that will absolutely get them, and it'll get them bad, and the warmer it gets, the more prolific they get. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and I know, like, I personally treat my garden organically, and I am not above using an inorganic treatment if I have to, but I don't think I've used anything non-organic in many years. But if the case came up, I would do what I had to do in order to get it to work. But we're not really talking about treatments because I know a lot of people don't want to use treatments. We will get into that, but let's not worry about that right now. You know that on Sandy Bottom Homestead, which, welcome to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm in coastal North Carolina, if you must know, and it's 70 degrees a day. We actually have a cold front coming through, and so the temperature is going to drop. But this is perfect for this. So here at Sandy Bottom Homestead, we talk a lot about, like a lot about planting earlier. Well, this is a huge benefit of planting earlier. When we get stuff in the ground earlier, like these rutabagas that are just now getting comfortable, we are getting a head start on the pest season. So we get a lot of pressure. I've seen my rutabagas actually do get hit pretty hard. These cabbages will get hit pretty hard, which they're basically done. This one's actually trying to bolt. But even this whole bed up here with all the kale and lettuce and stuff, this will get hit very hard at some point. But what we're doing right now is because we got these plants in the ground early and they're growing when it's cooler, there's not as much of an issue as pests. So if we move forward a season, like pretty good amount forward, and we start talking about squash, this is a huge way to beat the squash vine borer. Absolutely huge way. As soon as I can get squash in the ground, I put a plant in the ground, not a seed, a plant. Because what that does is it's starting to grow. It's already bigger. We're closer to our production time. But like, for instance, and this works with a lot of pests in your area too, but I know for a fact, a squash vine borer only has a certain period of time in which it will hatch and then come out to feed on your squashes. Well, the same's for everything else. So if you figure out that time, and how do you figure it out, Ben? Well, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to Google search it and figure it out. But you'll find out, and then you can start figuring out and timing out things differently. So in gardening, timing is everything. And if you look at it, we're about to start getting into the pest season now. And you can see, for instance, our Brussels sprouts, they're ready to harvest whenever we want to come get them. We're harvesting them on a regular basis and we're eating them consistently. So if a pest were to hit them, simply at this point, just harvest them and consume them. Then we don't have to worry about it. And that's the beauty of it, is we can immediately just bypass all of that. I don't have to treat, I don't have to do anything, because we have timed this out for these pests to really, when they start coming out, to harvest. And so the thing is, with these cool temperatures that we're planting in, it's really hard for these pests to come up. Whenever you get below freezing, which every single plant in my garden has made it to 19 degrees, just so you know, 19 degrees, everything planted. And this is within the past week. That knocks the pests back. But once you start getting into those 40 degree nights and 50 degree nights and 35 degree nights, that's when these hardy pests that feed on brassicas are going to be prolific and they're going to start multiplying. So you may be thinking like, well, that's crazy that these pests can live so long. Well, if we look at the design of them and we start thinking, okay, what do we know about a brassica, right? A brassica is a plant that grows in the cool weather, can easily survive below 32 degrees, and even lower, as I've just told you, And if the primary pest for that is your cabbage worm or anything like that, then you know it's going to be able to live in that cold weather. And that's something we need to remember. So it's not going to live way below it like some of these can, so it's a perfect opportunity to knock them back and get ahead of them. And that way you don't have to treat as much. Now, will you have to treat? Probably, but let's talk about treating. The wind is really starting to kick up. We're supposed to get some nasty wind tonight, so this could be an absolute nightmare. But if we go over here to our broccoli, and so this is what's left of Pestgate 2025. And if you don't know what Pestgate is, it's the urea gate. This is what's going to make it. Okay, so we lost 8 plants. We have backups. We're going to be putting them in. But if I was going to treat this and we get a pest on there, I only use 1 to 2 treatments for all of spring. For all of spring, all I use is BT, which is naturally occurring, or I'll use, like, especially for like aphids, what I'll use is just a little bit of dish soap with water, and it desiccates their skin and kills them. So we can do that. And those are the only 2 treatments that I use. Now, you do have to realize that if you're going to treat, you have to treat in the egg life cycle of the pest. So for instance, the cabbage worm, it's about 7 to 10 days. Most pests are 7 to 10 day egg cycle. So you treat, you come back 7 days later, you treat again, and then that should get rid of the eggs. And then I'll come back another 7 days after that and just do like a sweeping treatment, and then they should be good. So, you know how to do it. And what is important is we're not commercial farmers here. That's not what we're doing. So we don't have to have herbicides baked into our seeds. We don't have to have, a constant treatment regimen going on or anything like that. What we have to do is we have to be able to identify the issue. We have to be able to go ahead of it and say, hey, now how can we stop this before it even starts, i.e. planting earlier, getting things to grow before the pest hatches, and then what's our treatment cycle after that? So that is what's really going to help get all of this going in the right direction, because once you do those 2 things, you've already started it. But there's a third thing that we need to do, and this is one that's really important that a lot of gardeners struggle with. I do have an example, kind of. But if we go over here and we look at this cabbage, so you see how this cabbage is sick? It's done, right? It's really just turned downhill in the past week. It's as simple as this. And now you've taken care of it. So why is that so difficult? Why is that so important is really the question. The reason is because if you have a plant that's just absolutely infested, you've tried to treat it and you can't get rid of it, if you leave it in your garden, all you're doing is creating a brothel for these pests to just hump and produce. And that's not what we want. It's a breeding ground. So you want to remove that, get it out of there. And then you immediately if you take a plant that's completely infested, like with squash bugs, for example, a lot of this revolves around squash. But if you do it with squash bugs, for example, and it's completely infested, and you remove that, and you can see the eggs on the plants, that's why I use it as an example. You remove it, you stick it in the trash, you get it out of your garden. Think about the generations of pests that you just got rid of in that one move. And it's not going to continue in any direction. So you'll be able to change it, you'll be able to get rid of them, and you can even at that point reverse the course, because you may have a plant sitting next to it like this. Let's say there is a pest on one of these plants, this one in particular, and we remove this plant that we cannot get the pest under control from. Then guess what? They can't jump from here to here. Plain and simple. That's it. So it makes it a lot easier to do. Now, as far as like a pest treatment, there's many ways to do it. Kind of want to go back because I want to show you an example. Obviously you can use chemicals, you can use organic treatments, all that stuff. But if we come into the greenhouse here, I'll show you an example. Hopefully the wind doesn't blow the door shut and scare the crap out of me. I came in here the other day and I was doing some stuff. By the way, how beautiful is this lettuce? This is our super red lettuce we have in our store. And it's not red, but it definitely has red on it. So it's probably the way I'm growing it. I'm not exactly sure. Let's get some airflow. But what we had going on here the other day is we actually had aphids on, which plant was it? I believe it was this lettuce here. I just saw aphids. I think I even identified them on a video. All I did, and I noticed that they were coming over to this plant, which is now bolting, so it's got to be removed. But all I did is I just went like this and crushed all the aphids, right? And guess what? There's no aphids now. Nowhere. Like, we took care of them, we got rid of them, and then we moved on from that. And so this is a really important thing that we can do and follow, is like, hand picking is a real method. You just have to be very diligent, and the trick is really to keep them early. So look, there's 2 aphids right here. I don't know if you can see them. There's one here and one here. So, and now there's no aphids. Now if we because this is a greenhouse, it's all magnified. So is this an aphid? Yep, that's an aphid too. So if we let this plant sit here, invariably what's going to end up happening, I guarantee, is this plant will become infested. It's always the first one. And then they'll start jumping from plant to plant, because look how close we have things planted. So we have to be very vigilant. So if we see that, then I pull this plant up and it's got thousands of aphids on it. And we throw it out. Guess what? All of those aphids are now removed from this enclosed space, and then we don't have that issue anymore. This is another method that you can use that really makes a difference. I'm sure I just messed up the mic for that. This shirt is terrible for that. So, you know, using all of these methods really help, but starting in the beginning and working your way forward, you're doing multiple steps to take care of your pests. And that's what we want to do. You shouldn't, even if you don't care about using synthetic or organic, or even if you're only organic, we shouldn't depend on a pesticide. It's a tool in the toolbox to be used, but we should take other steps to prevent it from happening, and that's going to make a big difference. So let us know in the comments, have you had any issues with pests? And obviously we have all had issues with pests, but how have you successfully minimized your pest damage in your garden? That's what I want to know. So let us know in the comments below, and remember, pests are a pain in the butt, but we can manage them, and it's not going to be that difficult.